So now we're going to get to some awards, and to present those awards, we're going to have some honorable, amazing people. Everybody, please. She's been referenced, and so much of this would not be possible without her. Everybody make some noise for Joey Mogul and Carla Mayer.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name's Joey Mogul, and I'm a co-founder and board president of Chicago Tortured Justice Memorials.
Yeah.
And I'm a co-founder and the interim board president of the Chicago Tortured Justice Center. And before we begin, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the people we've lost. And I want to say it's a really difficult moment, in particular, given how long this struggle has been, right? From 1972 to 1991, Jon Burge and his henchmen engaged in this racist pattern and practice of torture, where they tortured over 125 Black people and forced them to confess. And to be clear, to confess to crimes they may have committed, and to crimes they did not. And those confessions were then illegally used against them in their criminal cases to not only secure their convictions, but lengthy prison sentences, as well as 11 on Illinois' death row. And what happened as a result was not only were the torture survivors themselves harmed and traumatized and carrying that legacy through today, but their family members and community members were harmed and deprived as well. And we've referenced this often, but particularly it was the mothers and the sisters and the family members who were not only fighting and agitating, but doing time with their loved ones who were incarcerated. And so one of the torture survivors that I've had the honor to represent is Johnny Plummer. And Johnny Plummer has been doing decades in prison for 2 cases, both of which he was tortured into confessing to. And I had an opportunity to work with his mother, Jeanette Plummer, who was tried and true and came to all of his court dates in and out, even through her own suffering. And she was waiting for the moment for him to be released so that she could actually hug him and put her arms around him. And we just lost her this past week, as Johnny's in court tomorrow, still fighting to be able to get a new trial without his tortured confession being used against him. So that's one of the individuals I'd like us to take a moment of silence for. Another is Robert Allen. He was tortured by some of Jon Burge's henchmen, particularly people well-known, Michael McDermott and Anthony Maslanka, 2 of the officers who were found to have engaged in abuse and battery and perjury by the special prosecutors in 2006. Robert was still doing time, and he passed away from cancer as he was fighting again for his release. And he was a treasured member of the community, and particularly by the center and the work of Mark Clements. And I just want to acknowledge how much work the Chicago Tortured Justice Center continues to do, not only for survivors who are outside, but for survivors who are incarcerated, as well as family members. I want to also acknowledge Ali Hammonds, who was one of the founders of the memorial and of the center, who we lost years ago, but we have Deborah with us today.
Yeah.
And finally, I want to acknowledge again Standish Willis, who's a renowned Black civil rights attorney, founder of Black People Against Police Torture, and who put out the call for reparations. And if there's others that you would like to name out loud, please do so, and then we'll take a moment of silence. Okay, let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. Before I hand it over to my esteemed colleague and comrade, Carla, I do want to just say a little bit of a shout out for the Chicago Torture Justice Center. We need this memorial because we need to preserve this history, right? And we need for all of us to be able to learn from it, to discuss this, and inspire us to fight on, right? There are no real spaces for us to discuss publicly this anti-Black state violence that Black people suffer from day in and day out. And this memorial, it will be the first of its kind in the nation that will be honoring the survivors of this kind of state violence, as well as all the litigation and organizing and fights for justice that took over decades. And that's why we're asking for your support today. We know that unless we change the dominant narrative and ensure that that dominant narrative is enduring and lasting and permanent, we will continue to see this violence inflicted day in and day out. And we will continue to see people being policed, prosecuted, and punished. This memorial is about inscribing this history into the landscape of Chicago. And it's about cementing this dominant narrative so that we don't forget and that it can inspire us to fight on and actually get people released from prison with the hope that they will never be imprisoned again. I also want to ask you, though, to support us today around the Chicago Torture Justice Center. Again, the first of its kind in the nation. You know, when survivors and family members were going through their trauma, there was no place for them to go to get any state trauma-informed care. There were no community spaces that were going to recognize that they too suffered from violence and that they needed healing services. And that is why we fought so hard in the reparations campaign to get the Chicago Torture Justice Center built. And I can tell you, as part of those negotiations, sitting down with Mayor Emanuel's administration, they did not want to build the center, and they did not want to build the memorial. And we had to fight to do it. And so I want people to just remember that this is a true community space that has brought together so many survivors of state violence, both police and prison. And it's one of the only spaces we have in the city of Chicago that provides these services and this care. And I am so grateful for that space, in particular for the mothers and the sisters and the family members of the survivors as well. Getting to work with Jeanette Plummer day in and day out as we fought for her son's release. She was traumatized, she suffered, and she had no place to go. And we are so fortunate that we have our clinical director, Nate Gillum, and others at the center who were willing to sit down and work and support the survivors and their family members. And so we will get to the ask later, but we are going to ask you to continue to give generously. These are unpopular projects. People don't want to remember. People don't want to fund work that actually indicts the state and the anti-Black racism that exists in this country. Okay, we don't have funders who always want to open up their wallets to give to us. That is why we have to do these fundraisers. That is why we need your support. And we are so grateful you are here today. We are going to ask you again to give generously and to spread the word so that we can continue to have these important institutions and monuments, not just here in the city of Chicago, but nationwide, to continue to fuel this movement. Thank you.